Children of the night, gather close and listen well, for the wind carries an old story, a story wrapped in wonder, sorrow, and truth. They say she was pure, untouched like the morning dew upon the grass, yet one day she found her belly heavy, her heart trembling, her eyes full of questions. She was a virgin, and she could not believe she was with child. The whispers spread like fire through dry leaves, and tongues wagged in the marketplace. How could such a thing be? Was it a curse, a blessing, or a mystery too deep for mortals to understand? The elders said, "Not every burden is punishment, and not every miracle wears a crown of gold. Sometimes the spirit world plants seeds where the human eye sees no hand." And so, children, from her pain grew wisdom. From her doubt came strength, for in every impossible tale lies a lesson that what we do not understand may yet hold the key to destiny. Hold this story close, for it reminds us that the unseen world is greater than the one we touch with our hands. They said she was pure, untouched like the first drop of rain that falls upon thirsty soil. Her innocence was not only in her body but in her spirit, for she walked through the village with a heart that carried no malice, no deceit, and no shadow of guilt. The elders often looked upon her and whispered, "This one is like the moon, shining but never stained by the dust of the earth." Her purity was not simply about her youth, but about the way she lived. She fetched water without complaint, cared for the children of neighbors without expecting thanks, and spoke words that healed quarrels instead of fueling them. In the evenings, when others gossiped by the fireside, she sat quietly, weaving mats with her mother, humming songs the ancestors had passed down through the generations. The maidens of the land sometimes envied her, for her name was spoken with admiration, yet she never boasted. She wore humility like a cloth, simple but shining. Some even believed she was chosen for something greater, though they could not say what that greater thing might be. She, however, never sought greatness, only peace. The men of the village saw her beauty, but it was a beauty they dared not touch, for her steps seemed guarded by unseen hands, and her laughter carried a power that silenced even the boldest tongues. It was said that whoever looked into her eyes too long would see their own truth reflected back at them. Some called her untouchable, others called her blessed, and still others simply watched in awe. Her life flowed with routine, unshaken by storms. Each dawn she walked to the stream with her clay pot, her reflection rippling on the water's surface. Each dusk she returned home under the call of crickets, her voice blending with the night's music. Nothing in her days suggested scandal, nothing hinted at hidden sin. She lived like a clear river, transparent to the eye of all who gazed upon her. Yet purity is a fragile thing in a world full of questions. The same villagers who praised her would later become the ones to raise their brows in disbelief, for they could not imagine how a maiden so untouched, so guarded, so deeply respected, could carry the weight of a story that had no ordinary explanation. But in those early days, before the whispers began, she was a symbol of innocence to everyone who knew her. The children followed her, asking her to tell them tales. The elders prayed that their daughters would learn her patience. Even the travelers who passed through the land often asked about the maiden who seemed to glow like the morning star. And so her reputation grew, not through her own hands, but through the lips of others who admired her from near and far. But destiny does not ask permission before it knocks at the door, and though she carried purity like a shield, fate was preparing to test that shield in ways no one in the village could ever imagine. She stood at the edge of mystery, though she did not yet know it, and the story that was to shake her name had only just begun its journey through the winds of time. When the whispers first began, they came like the faint rustle of dry leaves in the Harmattan wind. One woman saw her walking slower than usual, her hand resting often on her belly, and another noticed her body changing in quiet ways. At first, they dismissed it as the weariness of chores or the toll of sleepless nights, But as moons passed, the truth could no longer hide beneath her garments. The market women were the first to speak openly. "Have you seen her?" they asked, their voices dripping with both curiosity and suspicion. The maiden whose footsteps have always been as light as feathers now walks with the heaviness of a woman carrying life. Some laughed in disbelief, others gasped as though they had witnessed a spirit tricking the eyes. None could understand how such a thing was possible. The elders gathered under the iroko tree to discuss what they had seen. They stroked their gray beards, their eyes troubled by the puzzle before them. "This is no ordinary matter," one said. "If she is indeed with child, then the ways of men and women have been broken, or perhaps the ways of the unseen have revealed themselves." But even among them no answer was certain. The young maidens whispered among themselves, torn between envy and fear. "How could she be with child when she has never been touched?" one asked. "If such a thing can happen to her, could it not happen to us as well?" Their laughter was nervous, their questions sharp. For what befell her seemed to unravel the very rules of their womanhood. The men, too, were unsettled. Some doubted her story without even hearing it, saying, "No tree bears fruit without a seed." Others shook their heads, unwilling to accuse her, but unable to believe her innocence. For in their world, every effect had a cause, and every pregnancy had a beginning that could be seen, touched, or named. But here there was nothing they could grasp. Her own family stood torn between love and disbelief. Her mother, who had always trusted her daughter's words, began to weep at night, asking the ancestors for guidance. "If my daughter has been chosen for something beyond this world, let it be revealed. But if shame has touched her, then cover me in silence." The house became heavy with prayers, yet still no clarity came. As her belly grew, so too did the mystery. Travelers from other villages came just to see her with their own eyes, to witness the girl who was said to be carrying life without ever knowing the touch of man. Some brought gifts, hoping to be blessed by her strangeness. Others brought questions, sharp as knives, to pierce through the veil of her story. Still, no answer could be found, and so the mystery spread like fire in the dry grasslands. What began as whispers became debates, and what began as debates became endless tales. Some said she was cursed by spirits of the forest. Some said she was chosen by the heavens for a hidden purpose. Others simply shook their heads, declaring that the world was changing in ways too deep for ordinary minds to understand. Though the village filled itself with noise and questions, her heart carried a silence far louder than the voices around her. Every morning, as she rose to fetch water, she felt the eyes that lingered on her. Some gazes carried pity, others suspicion, and a few open mockery. Yet none hurt as deeply as the whispers she could not escape inside her own chest. Fear walked beside her like a shadow that stretched longer than her body. She feared the unknown growing within her, feared the judgment of the people she had once called family, feared even the gods whose ways she could not decipher. At night she pressed her palms against her belly, whispering, "Why me? What have I done to call this upon myself?" Doubt crept into her thoughts like a serpent slithering through dry leaves. She began to question her own innocence, though she knew in her bones she had done nothing to deserve blame. Could I have angered the spirits without knowing? She wondered. Could the ancestors have chosen me for something I cannot yet see? Her mind became a battlefield where questions clashed without answers. Shame, like a heavy cloth, wrapped itself around her shoulders wherever she went. She avoided gatherings, for the laughter of others now seemed sharpened, as if every smile hid a secret insult. When she walked past the market, she lowered her eyes, for she could no longer bear the weight of curious stares. The world that once felt warm had become a stage where she stood alone, trembling under the spotlight of suspicion. Even in her own home, the air was thick with unspoken words. Her mother tried to comfort her with gentle touches, yet behind those touches she felt the trembling of hands unsure of truth. Her siblings watched her from corners, too young to understand yet old enough to sense that something had changed. The hut that once held laughter now carried silence that seemed to grow heavier with each passing night. Sleep did not bring her peace. Dreams visited her with strange visions, of rivers swelling beyond their banks, of birds circling overhead without landing, of a child's cry echoing in an empty forest. She woke in sweat, her breath quick, her heart pounding with the weight of mysteries she could not name. The line between dream and reality blurred, leaving her restless in both worlds. She longed to cry out to the heavens, to demand an explanation, but her voice caught in her throat. To speak was to invite more judgment, and so she kept her pain hidden, burying it deep where no one could see. Yet pain buried is not pain gone. It grows roots, winding tightly around the heart until even the simplest joys wither. And so she moved through her days like one carrying an unseen chain. Her steps grew slower, her smile faded, her voice grew quieter. The maiden once admired for her purity was now a figure wrapped in fear, cloaked in doubt and burdened by shame. Still, somewhere deep within her, a small ember of strength refused to die, though it flickered weakly beneath the storm of her heart. Whispers are like smoke. Once they rise, they cannot be caught, nor can they be hidden. At first, the murmurs about her condition floated softly, shared between two women pounding yam or two men sipping palm wine in the shade. But soon the whispers grew into a chorus, swelling louder than the drums that once celebrated her name. The people did not wait for answers, they created their own. Surely she has hidden something. Some declared, "No woman carries a child without reason." Their words, spoken with certainty, spread like roots beneath the ground, unseen yet strong enough to trip her every step. No one asked her what she knew. Everyone preferred the stories they shaped for themselves. In the market, laughter turned sharp, edged with mockery. "The one who walked like the moon now carries a secret like the rest of us," they jeered. Others shook their heads in false pity, saying, "What a shame to wear the crown of innocence and still be struck by such scandal." Yet none could speak of the truth, for none had witnessed anything but rumor. The young maidens, once eager to sit by her side, now drew away in silence. They looked at her with eyes that mixed curiosity with suspicion. Some whispered, perhaps she lied about herself all along. Others, fearing the mystery, said, "Stay close to her, and the same fate may fall upon you." So the friendships she once held like woven baskets began to unravel, strand by strand. Even the men who had once admired her joined the chorus of judgment. They spoke boldly in gatherings, as though they knew the secret no one had ever heard from her lips. "A tree cannot bear fruit without seed," they repeated, striking her name with their words. And when their tongues grew tired, they filled the silence with knowing glances that cut her deeper than knives. The elders, who should have been the keepers of wisdom, also faltered. Some reminded the people to hold their tongues, but others gave in to the tide of gossip. Around the fire at night, they debated her story like a riddle meant to entertain rather than a life meant to protect. Their uncertainty gave the people permission to speak as they pleased. Children, too young to understand but quick to mimic, began to sing her name in playful chants. Their voices rang in the air like mockingbirds, turning her sorrow into a game. She could not walk past the stream or the fields without hearing the echo of her own shame carried on the innocent lips of those too small to know cruelty. And so the village, once her shelter, became a courtroom without walls. Every man, woman, and child became judge and jury, weighing her with scales built not of truth but of rumor. Their whispers clung to her skin like dust after a long journey, impossible to brush away. The more she tried to hide from them, the louder their voices became, until it seemed the whole world had turned against her. When the whispers grew too loud, the elders called for a gathering beneath the old iroko tree, the same tree where disputes had been settled for generations. The air was heavy with expectation, for the people longed to hear judgment spoken. But the elders, unlike the restless crowd, did not rush their words. They sat in silence for a long while, listening to the cries of birds and the rustle of leaves, as though waiting for the earth itself to speak first. At last the oldest among them rose, leaning on his staff carved with symbols of the ancestors. His voice was slow but steady, like the flow of a river in the dry season. "My children," he said, "do not let your tongues run faster than your wisdom. Not every shadow is a curse, and not every strange thing is born of evil." His words hung in the air, calming some hearts yet stirring others. Another elder, a woman whose hair was as white as cowrie shells, added her voice. "The world we see is not the only world that exists. Many things walk beside us, spirits, blessings, and mysteries that our eyes cannot behold. What seems impossible to men may be the work of forces beyond our knowing. Shall we condemn what we do not understand?" The crowd shifted uneasily, for the people had grown comfortable in their judgments. To be told they did not understand was to be reminded of their smallness before the unseen. Yet the elders pressed on. "If the river swells without rain, do we accuse it of lying?" one asked. "No, we say the gods have poured their water where we cannot see. Why then do you think the womb cannot swell without the hand of man?" Some villagers nodded in agreement, their eyes opening like doors to a forgotten truth. Others scoffed, muttering that wisdom was becoming foolishness. Yet the elders did not waver. "Do not be quick to call a thing a curse," they said, "for many blessings come wrapped in burdens, and many burdens come bearing gifts unseen." They reminded the people of old tales, the child born with the mark of a tortoise who later saved the village from famine, the girl who sang in her sleep and was mocked, until her song led warriors to victory, the hunter who once vanished for 7 days and returned with knowledge of herbs that healed the land. Were these not mysteries too, the elders asked, and yet did they not become blessings? Their words fell like rain on parched soil, though not every heart received them. Some clung to their doubts, but others began to see her not as cursed but as chosen. Perhaps, whispered a few, this is not a story of shame, but of destiny. The idea did not erase the whispers, but it planted new seeds of wonder that might one day grow. And so, while the crowd remained divided, the elders' voices lingered in the ears of all who listened. They had not cleared the mystery, nor had they silenced the gossip, but they had reminded the people that life was larger than their understanding, and that sometimes the very things that seemed darkest carried light hidden within their folds. Children of night, you have heard the tale of the maiden whose life was touched by mystery. The world judged her, fear weighed upon her, and whispers circled like vultures in the sky. Yet the elders reminded us, not every shadow hides a curse, and not every burden is meant to break us. Sometimes the river flows where no rain has fallen. Sometimes the seed grows where no hand has planted, and sometimes the spirit world chooses a vessel, though the vessel does not understand why. So when you hear stories that your mind cannot explain, do not be quick to mock, do not be quick to condemn. For even the smallest mystery may carry the weight of destiny. Remember, children, the eyes see only what is before them, but the heart, if it listens, can hear what the spirits whisper in silence. Let this tale remind you, the world is wide, the unseen is deep, and every life may carry a story too great for human tongues to explain.